Right, welcome back. Today is Monday, January the 17th, 2022. Today we'll be doing chapter 1 reading of the book known as Promise Me Dad by Joe Biden. Let's just jump straight into the chapter 1. Chapter 1 reads Biden's Family Thanksgiving. Again, this book is Rules for Happiness. The rules for happiness is always to have something to do. The rules for happiness is always to have someone to love. And the rules for happiness is always having something to hope for. Immanuel Kant. Alright, so here we go. Promise me, Dad. Alright, so it says Biden Family Thanksgiving, Chapter 1. It says, the days were getting shorter, so the light in the sky had started to fall away when the gate to our temporary home swung open and our motorcade edged beyond the fencing that surrounded the United States Naval Observatory. In Washington, D.C., we were riding from our official residence at the observatory to Andrews Air Force Base, where my children and grandchildren were already gathering. Jill and I were anxious to be with them for our annual Thanksgiving trip. Family had been an essential escape in the 5.5 years I had been vice president. Being with them was like flying in the eye of a storm, a reminder of the natural ease and rims of our previous life and of the calm to come when my time in office was done. The job had been an incredible adventure, but there were so many things Jill and I missed from life before the vice presidency. We missed our home in Wilmington. We missed the chance to be alone in a car on a long drive where you could talk with abandonment of the world. We missed having command over our own schedule and our own movements. Vacations, holidays, and celebrations with family had become the respites that restored some sense of equilibrium. And the rest of our family seemed to need these breaks as much as Jill and I did. We had all been together just a few months earlier for our annual summer trip to one of the national parks. But 5 days of hiking, whitewater rafting, and long, loud dinners in the Tentons had apparently not been enough for the grown-ups. Jill and I were in our cabin packing for departure the last day when there was a knock on the door. It was our son, Hunter. He knew Jill and I were going alone to the beach for a 4-day retreat. But he wondered if maybe because he and his wife had some free time they might tag along. We said of course. Within a few minutes our other son, Buey, knocked. His in-laws had agreed to watch the children. Maybe we wouldn't mind it if he and his wife joined us at the beach on Long Island. We said, of course. I suspect there are parents who might feel up upon when asked to give up their alone time. I regarded these requests as the fruits of all life well lived. Our grown children actually wanted to be with us. So we had had another wonderful 4 days at the beach together in August. But by November, there was also a perceptible urgency to this need for togetherness that was a bit disquieting, and I was very mindful of it when Jill and I set out for our yearly escape to Nantucket for another Biden family Thanksgiving. We passed through the gates of the observatory, and I felt our government required armor limousine makes it a custom, gentle pivot onto Massachusetts Avenue, where local traffic had been halted to clear the path for our journey. I glanced at the squat standing digital clock at the top of the driveway, as I had maybe 1,000 times since we had moved into the official residence. Red numbers glowed, ticking away in metronomic perfection. The numbers were 5 in the morning, 11 minutes with 42 seconds. It was 5 in the morning, 11 minutes and 43 seconds. It was 5 in the morning, 11 minutes and 44 seconds. It was 5:11:45. This was the nation's precise time, which was generated less than 100 yards away by the U.S. Naval Observatory master clock. Precise time, synchronized to the millisecond, had been deemed an operational imperative by the Department of Defense, which had troops and bases in locations around the globe. 5:11:50, 5:11:51, 5:11:52. Our limousine was already accelerating out of the turn. With an abrupt force that pushed me back into the soft leather seats, the clock was behind us in a flash, out of sight but still marking the time as it melted away. 5:11:58, 5:11:59, 5:12 in the morning. The motorcade arced toward the southeast, down one side of the circle around the observatory, and we could see the lights of the official residence as they flashed through the leafless trees. I was happy to say goodbye to the house for a few days. Our departure meant that many of the naval enlisted aides who looked after us were free to spend the entire holiday with their own families. The procession gained speed once we hit the parkway, and our motorcycle escorts nudged aside other travelers. The motorcade traced the southern edge of Washington within sight of the monuments and public buildings. Arlington National Cemetery, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, with the White House in the distance beyond. It is the Jefferson Memorial, the United States Capitol. I have served in elective office in this city continuously since 1973. 36 years as a senator and 6 as vice president, but I had not grown indifferent to the beauty and import of these towering landmarks, which were now haloed in a glow of soft light. I still view those sturdy marble structures as representatives of our ideals, our hopes, and our dreams. My working life in Washington had given me a sense of pride and accomplishment from the day I arrived, and that feeling had not dimmed after almost 42 years. The truth was, on November 25th, 2014, I was as excited and energized by my work as I had been at any time in my career. Though my current office was, it must be admitted, a truly odd job, there is a strange and singular elasticity to the responsibilities of a vice president. As a strictly constitutional matter, the holder of the office has very little power. He or she is charged with breaking a tie vote in the Senate, which I had not been called to do in nearly 6 years, and waiting around to make or to take over if the president is somehow disabled. A previous occupant was famously quoted as saying that the office is not worth a bucket of warm spit. That's the expurgated version. He did not say spit. The actual power of the office is reflective. It depends almost entirely on the trust and confidence of the president. Barack Obama had handed me things to run from the beginning of our first term, and once he assigned me to oversee the Recovery Act of 2009, or budget negotiations with Senator Mitch McConnell, or diplomatic relations with Iraq, he did not look over my shoulder. I believe I did my job well enough to earn and keep his trust. He sought my advice as much as ever at the end of 2014. And seemed to value it, which meant there were days when I felt that I had it in my power to help bend the course of history ever so slightly for the better. And somewhere in the motorcade that evening, as we sped through the streets of Washington, was a car carrying the vice presidential military aide, who was in possession of the nuclear football, which had to be within my reach at all times. I was one of only a handful of people who had control of the codes that could launch a nuclear strike on almost any target on the planet. So, a reminder of the great responsibilities of the office and the trust reposed in me was there at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But in spite of all that, in spite of position and standing, I was incapable of doing the thing I most wanted to do heading into that holiday week, to slow down that master clock at the top of my driveway to make those red ticking numbers hesitate, to give myself and my family, and most importantly my older son, a little extra breathing room. I wanted the power to cheat time. The Biden tradition of Thanksgiving Nantucket started as an act of diplomacy. Back in 1975, I was a first-term senator and a single father of 2 boys. Buey was 6 years old and Hunter just 5. And Jill Jacobs and I had started to talk seriously about a future together. Thanksgiving was the first holiday for Jill and me together, and we had too many invitations. My parents wanted us to spend the day with them in Wilmington. Jill's parents wanted us in Willow Grove. Pennsylvania. The parents of my first wife, who had died along with my baby daughter in a car accident a few years earlier, wanted us to bring their grandsons to upstate New York and spend a long weekend with them. No matter which family we chose, we were going to hurt somebody's feelings, which was the last thing either Jill or I wanted to do. I was in my Senate office one day that fall, explaining this predicament to my chief of staff, and he said, "What you need is a nuclear Thanksgiving," meaning the nuclear family alone. Only Wes Barthelms was a Boston guy, so what he actually said was nuclear Thanksgiving. I wasn't sure what exactly he was trying to say until he explained that might be easiest on everybody if the 4 of us, me and Jill, Buey, and Hunt, went away alone. He suggested the island of Nantucket, which was an hour by ferry south of Cape Cod. Neither Jill nor I had ever been there, but we decided to go ahead and make an adventure of it. We filled my Jeep Wagoner with 57 cents a gallon gas and piled the boys and the dog into the back seat for what was likely to be a 6-hour ride to the ferry in Hyannis, Massachusetts. Now, 6 hours is a long time for two young boys to be trapped in the back seat of a moving car. But Jill was already proven herself a resourceful caregiver. She had picked up every toy catalog and clothing catalog she could find, and when Buey and Hunt started to get restless, she tossed the catalogs into the backseat. The three of them spent hours lifting through the pages, and the boys started making and refining their wish lists for Christmas gifts so they would have something to send to Santa Claus. Up at the North Pole, Jill told them to take their time and make sure to get it right. There was no rush. Nantucket turned out to be worth it once we finally got there. 8 hours after we left our house in Wilmington, it was chilly on the little island at the end of November. But you could smell the tangy salt air of the Atlantic. The island had emptied for the season, so we had much of the place to ourselves. Most of the restaurants and many of the shops were shorter. The downtown was tiny, maybe 5 square blocks, but we spent hours there casing the storefronts and going inside the ones that were open to look around. I told the boys I would buy each of them a single gift on that trip, whatever they wanted, within reason. They took the time to look around. Buey especially liked Murray's Toggery shop, home of the famous Nantucket Reds. The cotton pants were designed to fade to soft, dusty rose. Hunt fell for the Nobby clothes shop, where the owner made a fuss over him. We had Thanksgiving dinner at the Gerard Coffin House at 130-year-old inn built back when Nantucket was a commercial center of the whaling industry. And then we strayed around afterwards to sit by the fireplace and play checkers. And we played checkers. The next day we had lunch at a restaurant called the Brotherhood of Thieves. Went to the little movie house in town, tossed a football on the beach, and drove back into town to watch the annual lighting of the Christmas tree. We took scouting drives around the island, and whenever we passed a radio transmission tower with a big red light on top, I warned the boys to get down in the back seat so the red-eyed monster couldn't see them. We had such a good time that we even went to check out a little salt box house that stood above the dunes at Sconset Beach. The asking price was too rich for a senator's salary in 1975. But the four of us had our picture taken on the porch of the house. Beneath the carved wooden sign that read "Forever Wild." On the drive back to Delaware, I was already thinking about a return trip the next year. Jill and I got married a year and a half later, and our daughter Ashley was born 4 years after that. And time seemed to move faster. Buey and Hunt graduated high school, then college, then law school. Hunt married Kathleen in 1993, and they had 3 daughters. Buey married Haley in 2002, and they had a daughter, then a son. Jill and I were no longer just mom and dad. We were Nana and Pop. Ashley finished graduate school and married Howard, and every year, even as the family grew, we spent Thanksgiving on Nantucket or Nanatucket, as our grandchildren took to calling it. Even when they were old enough to know better, the little trip in the Wagoneer grew into a caravan of 2 or 3 cars with grandchildren shifting loyalties among the fleet at rest stops. Then there was the final mad dash to catch the ferry, a hot chocolate or clam chowder for the ride across the water. We had some great years in that span, and we had some lousy years, but whatever was happening, whatever bumps and bruises we were suffering, we put it all aside and celebrated Thanksgiving in Nantucket. The holiday trip was a constant in our grandchildren's lives from the time they were aware, and they made it clear how much it meant to them. Little notes started appearing at our house as early as September, even before the leaves started to change color, all written out in the grandkids' hands. 2 months to Nantucket, 5 weeks to Nantucket. Some had drawings of the houses we had stayed at or the beach. 2 weeks to Nantucket, only 5 days to Nantucket. The frolics and habits of our earliest visits grew into immutable family traditions. Shopping downtown, lunch at the Brotherhood, the trips to the beach with football in hand. We went back to that little salt box every year to get the family photo under the Cars Forever wall sign. Those pictures became a marker of our family's progress, like the lines a parent's pencil in on the doorframe as a record of growth. First just the four of us, then 5, 8, 11, and after Bewey's son Hunter was born in 2006 and Ashley's husband Howard joined the family a few years later, we began to grow and we were 13 strong within the family. The great work product of the Thanksgiving trip year after year continued to be the Christmas list. It was painstaking, deliberate, and serious business. Nobody shirked and nobody would be hurried in the enterprise. The catalogs usually came out midway through the drive north, somewhere between the Tampa Zee Bridge and Mystic, Connecticut, but that was only the beginning. There were long sessions after dinners at whatever inn or house we were in. And it might be the night after Thanksgiving before Jill finally closed down the bidding and everybody, children and grown-ups alike, had to present to her their Christmas list. Maximum 10 items, minimum 10 items. I was invariably in trouble with my grandchildren at the close of business. Pop only has 2. Again, there was one little hitch in the great Christmas list. Endeavor, and that was my becoming vice president in 2009. The entire clan flew together to Nantucket that year on Air Force 2, which struck me as a pretty welcome change after all those hours piloting a car up Interstate 95 during one of the busiest travel weeks of the year. And one that I thought would delight the grandkids especially. But it's not much more than an hour in the air from Andrews Air Force Base to Nantucket Memorial Airport, which turns out to be in the flight back. So, on Christmas lists were safely in Jill's hands, my grandchildren filed into my private cabin on Air Force 2 en masse. From 15-year-old Naomi or 3-year-old Hunter, they had all talked it over, and the finding was unanimous. Unanimous. This new mode of travel just wasn't going to work for them. Pop, Naomi spoke for the group. Can we drive again next year? I suspected the head of my Secret Service detail, in weighing this consideration against security concerns, was not likely to be swayed by the power of the Christmas list argument, no matter how heartfelt. Everybody in the family knew the drill. By November 2014, this trip would mark our 6th flight to Nantucket on Air Force 2. We usually drove out to Andrews in separate cars and met the tarmac. The rest of the family was already there when Jill and I pulled up after our 25-minute ride to the airbase. Our German Shepherd jumped out of the car and scurried across the tarmac. No leash, no guide. This was old hat to Champ. He went right up the stairs and onto the plane. The staircase leading to the entry door of Air Force 2 is just wide enough for 2 people, and there are about 20 steps. I kept an eye on Bewey as he made his way up the left side of the staircase. My older son was a little thinner than when I had seen him last. But I thought maybe he had regained some of the strength he had lost in his right arm and his right leg. A few months earlier, getting up those stairs was a struggle, but he insisted on doing it himself. He was fine, he kept saying. In fact, I had not heard him complain once since his diagnosis 15 months earlier. It's all good, he would say over and over, getting better every day. I was under strict orders never to betray worry in front of anybody. Dad, don't look at me sad, Buey had admonished me once. When he caught me eyeing him, he had been firm. Dad, you understood me? Don't look at me like that. 2 hours after we boarded Air Force Two, we were at our friend's house on the island. Divine up bedrooms, primogeniture was family tradition in the matter of accommodations. Jill and I got to pick first, then Buey and Holly, then Hunt and Caitlin. Then Ashley and Howard, and down through the grandchildren. The White House communications team had already claimed one room in the house. A vice president might leave his office, but the office never left the vice president. The communication staff had wire and a secure telephone line for any emergency or international calls, and set up a secure video conference hookup to the White House Situation Room just in case. We had dinner that Tuesday night, 2 days before Thanksgiving, and afterwards sat around with the grandchildren who insisted we all play Mafia and who done it game that could be played around the dining room table. After the younger ones went to bed, the rest of us sat around telling old family stories. Buey and Hunt would not let me forget the day, almost 40 years earlier, when I made Buey eat an apple covered in sand after he dropped it. Despite having been told not to take it to the beach, and remember when Buey and Ashley dangled a drumstick over Hunt's nose so it would be the first thing he saw when he woke, sleeping off the effects of overeating at the Thanksgiving feast. And remember the first time we jumped the dunes? It was after midnight when Jill and I finally turned in. We were happy. The family was together in a place that had been nothing but a joy to us for almost 40 years. But before we went to sleep, Jill and I talked about trimming ourselves a bit on this trip. Maybe slowing the pace of activity on account of Buey, though we knew he would insist at nothing change. All good, he would say, all good. Nobody spoke it out loud, and they didn't have to. But this Thanksgiving felt different, like there was added pressure to just be us. We were fastidious about observing our long-standing rituals. We slept in on Wednesday morning and lazed around as always until Nana prodded the group out the door. We drove into town and started a stroll down the same streets and into the same stores we visited for almost 40 years. Every member of the family was already in search of the perfect price. As I had every year, I still brought one gift for each person. We hit the no-be-closed shop first, as always, and the owner heard we were there, as always. He said, "Where's Hunt?" Every member of the family was already in search of the perfect price, as I had every year. I still bought one gift for each person. We hit the no-be-closed shop first, as always, and the owner heard we were there, as always. And the owner of the no-be-closed shop said in a loud voice, "Where's Hunt?" Sammy yelled, just like he would when my younger son was still a shy 8-year-old and not a grown man with one daughter in college. Then it was off to the watch shop owned by Spider Wright, a legendary surfer and surfboard designer who had known Buey and Hunt and Ashley since when they were just little peanuts. And the Sunken Ship, a souvenir shop the younger children liked best, and Murray's Tuggery shop. We travel in a loose pack, with little groups splintering off to go into particular stores. The older grandchildren would take the younger ones in town. The older grandchildren would take the younger ones into tow. I wanted to stop in at the hub to get my coffee and maybe a newspaper. Ashley and Jill wanted to go to the Nantucket Cashmere. Champ was on his own to wander with whatever group showed him the most love. We scouted the shops for hours, cell phones buzzing. You gotta come check out the My House physician Kevin O'Connor, who had started making the trip with us the year before, would shake his head at the browsing extravaganza. It's what? 4 or 5 blocks of stores, he would say. I've been here an hour and I've seen the whole place. What are you doing all that time? But it felt so good to be out in the holiday crowd again, doing something most people take for granted. Our Secret Service detail gave us a wide berth, spelled B-E-R-T-H, a berth in Nantucket. So there was an illusion of real freedom. For a moment, everything felt all right. Everything seemed normal. Our progress was slowed by people who wanted to get a handshake or a hug from the Vice President of the United States, or a selfie. And I was not only drawing, but Buey Biden was already a rising star in Democratic politics. He was just about to finish his second term as Attorney General of the state of Delaware, and had already stated in his intention to run for governor in 2016. His announcement had cleared the field. Nobody back home in the state of Delaware was prepared to challenge Buey in the Democratic primary. He was generally regarded as the most popular politician in the state, more popular than even his father. Delawareans saw in him what I did. Buey Biden, at age 45, was Joe Biden 2.0. He had all the best of me, but with the bugs and flaws engineered out. And he had Hunt in his corner as a speechwriter and trusted advisor. I was pretty sure Buey could run for president someday, and with his brother's help, he could win. When Barack and I won re-election back in 2012, I had started thinking hard about stepping aside after the second term and shifting the family's focus to Buey's political future. I am not sure when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I had begun to look up to my own sons. They were gone and honorable men. They were good and honorable men who shared a belief in public service and acted on it. Hunt spent the summer after his junior year in college as a member of the Youth Volunteer Corps, teaching English to children in Belize. His first year after college, JVC work took him to Portland, Oregon, where he was in charge of an emergency service center in a disadvantaged neighborhood. His first big job after he graduated, spelled Y-A-L-E, Yale Law School, was an executive trainee at a big bank to Wilmington, where he was on a fast track, but he came to me one night after just a few years and said he needed to do something more meaningful. So he left that high-paying position to take a job in government. By Thanksgiving of 2014, Hunt was in his third year as a chairman of the board of the World Food Program USA. Buey had taken a similar path, propelled by his own steely sense of honor and duty. He had volunteered as a civilian working in the United States Attorney's Office to go to the war zone in Kosovo. Kosovo could be the capital of Ukraine, or it could be Russia. Don't quote me on that though. Could be Ukraine. To go to the war zone in Kosovo to help that emergency republic develop its legal system and its courts. He had joined the Delaware Army National Guard at age 34 and insisted on going with his unit when it was deployed to Iraq 5 years later. But he had to make a firm commitment to the Pentagon that he would take a leave of absence as Attorney General of the state in order to devote his full energies to his responsibilities in Iraq. He really did that. I can't say I was happy about how he went out of his way to put himself in harm's way again. But I was not surprised. I considered reminding him that he had already served in one field of fire and he might not want to do it again. But I knew him well enough to know what he said. I signed up for this, Dad. I can't let my guys down. It's my duty. Buey, spelled B-E-A-U. Buey was also determined to be a good father. There was a story that got passed around by my staff, something that happened on one of our earliest Nantucket trips. Buey and his son Hunter were riding back to the house in one of the cars in the motorcade when Buey decided to make a quick stop at the Murray's Toggery to pick up a new pair of Nantucket Reds. His wife Haley would joke that Buey was too conservative to actually wear the flamboyant Reds, but liked knowing they were in his closet. When Buey's car peeled off from the main motorcade that morning in the tour to Murray's, little Hunter jumped out from his car seat in the back. "Hey driver, you missed your turn." "Please stop the car," Buey said to Ethan Rosenwig, spelled E-T-H-A-N. Ethan. Last name R-O-S-E-N-Z-W-E-I-G. Rosenwig. Who was driving? Ethan was the dean of admissions at Emory Law in Atlanta, but he liked to volunteer advance work for us. When he had free time during the holidays, Ethan had known Buey a long time. He could tell Buey was disturbed. "Hey, Buey," Ethan said. "It's no big deal." He didn't mean anything by it. But Buey urged him to pull the car over. He wanted this lesson to register with Hunter. Ethan pulled onto the shoulder and Buey got out and opened the back door so he could talk to his son. "Look, Hunter," Buey said, and he was firm. "That's Ethan, and he's our friend. You never address somebody as driver. You never address somebody by the job they do. That's not polite, okay? You understand? Love you, buddy." Buey kept to himself our first day in Nantucket. His Secret Service detail had become really good at walling him away. He was easily fatigued and increasingly shy to interact with people. He was losing feeling in his right hand, and it wasn't strong enough for a good, firm handshake. And he had been wrestling with a condition called aphasia, spelled A-P-H-A-S-I-A. radiation and chemotherapy had done some damage to the part of his brain that controlled the ability to name things. Buey retained all his cognitive capabilities, but he was struggling to recall proper nouns. He was working like hell to win back his strength and to reverse the aphasia. He was going to Philadelphia most days for an hour of physical therapy and occupational therapy, and then an hour of speech therapy. All above and beyond his regular chemo treatments, Ashley would meet him there to keep him in company at the therapy sessions while he did strength and stretching exercises, or went through sheets of pictures naming objects. Ashley would take him out for food before he headed off for a 2 days' work as Attorney General. He meant to prove to everybody that he could handle this and that he was making progress, and I believed him. The human brain is remarkably remarkably the human brain is remarkably agile. The human brain is remarkably the human brain is remarkably the human brain is remarkable agile. The human brain is remarkable agile. The human brain is remarkably the human brain is remarkably agile. The human brain is remarkably the human brain is remarkable. The human brain is remarking. The human brain is remarkably agile. See, this is where I'm starting to realize that there's some words that physicians made to confuse the mind. The English language is very confucius. And this is why sometimes doctors, they try to make up these words that sound so hard to pronounce to therefore confuse a patient, making them feel dull, D-U-L-L, making you feel like this. Oh, I can't pronounce it. Only the doctor knows. But let's just keep reading. Keep mark what it says. It says the human brain is remarkable and agile, is what it should say. And Buey was literally training other areas near his speech centers to take over the naming function. That's why I say you should always cherish your anger, because your anger is what leads you to sanity. It's what leads you to pure health. Some say that when you get angry, it's bad for you. But you should know how to cherish it, so when the day comes, you could outlaw the foolishness in others. The human brain is remarkable and agile. And Buey was literally training other areas near his speech centers to take over the naming function. It was slow going, but he never showed frustration. Nobody in the family or among his friends or among his staff at the Attorney General's office saw him angry or down. It just took a little patience and a few extra words when he couldn't recall Major, spelled M-A-Y-O-R. You know that guy who runs the city or dinner roll? Past the brown thing you put the butter on? Part of the beauty of the family vacation in Nantucket was the splendid and enforced isolation. The trip had been a no-phone zone all through my years in the Senate. I did no business unless some dire emergency arose, so that my children and my grandchildren had me to themselves. But that was the one tradition that had grown a bit tattered by 2014. As vice president, I was never entirely free of work. Even around Thanksgiving, for instance, I had to peel off from the trip to town that Wednesday and get back to the house to take a call. I had to get back to the White House to take a call on the secure line from Arsenian Yatsenyuk, spelled Yatsenyuk. Arseny, spelled Arseniy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-letter word, spelled Arseniy. Spelled Yatsenyuk. Pronounced Yatsenyuk. Yatsenyuk. Arseny Yatsenyuk. The Prime Minister of Ukraine, who was anxious to fill me in on what had happened in Kyiv, spelled Kyiv, 4-letter word, spelled Kyiv. That day, I had been in that city just 4 days earlier, and things looked perilously, spelled Perilous. The movement started by the Revolution of Dignity, a remarkable people's protest that happened on a square in Kyiv called the Maidan Nesalesnosny was framed. Alright, so the protest, which was called the Maidan, spelled Maidan, also spelled Nezalezhnosty, was frying, spelled Fraying, fraying. It could mean it was on top of trending. The Ukrainians seemed about to lose their fight for democracy and independence. Russian President Vladimir Putin had used the instability of the unfolding revolution as an opportunity to seize by military force a part of Ukraine called Crimea. And he kept the pressure on. He had lately been sending Russian tanks and soldiers across the border to menace other provinces in the eastern part of the country, and was threatening to cut off Ukrainian supply of natural gas, which would have badly destabilized the country's already shaky economy. Ukraine's newly elected democratic government was in real danger of crumbling under the weight of Putin's cynical push. Ukraine's new president and its new prime minister, meanwhile, were having ongoing trust issues. President Petro, spelled Petro, Poroshenko, spelled Poroshenko, and Prime Minister Yatsenyuk were from competing parties, and the recent elections had been bruising and divisive. The constituencies remained more invested in scoring political points than in governing. The Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk factions were wasting energy bickering with one another when they should have been creating institutions and security forces capable of defending against Putin. The Ukrainians had still not formed a workable coalition government. At the end of November, 6 months after Poroshenko assumed the presidency, if they didn't get that done soon, it will mean snap elections. And that meant trouble. Putin operatives were sure to pump money into the campaigns of pro-Russia candidates and probably end any hopes for real independence in the Ukraine. The European Union, also known as NATO, spelled NATO, was likely to abandon the Ukraine as a hopeless cause, and the country will be pulled back into Russia's toxic orbit. The bravery and sacrifice of so many Ukrainian people in the revolution of dignity will come to nothing. I have spent months exchanging phone calls with both Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk, trying to convince them each separately to put loyalty to country over loyalty to political party. I had invested 2 full days in Kyiv the previous week trying to make Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk see the danger of their stubborn unwillingness to work together. I was still working the problem on my way out of Kyiv on November 22, just 4 days earlier. Yatsenyuk had called me as I was leaving, and I invited him to ride to the airport with me. I like Arseny. He was smart, a PhD economist, but no cloistered academic. He was a serious young leader who cared deeply that his home country be a functioning democracy with secure borders. The 40-year-old prime minister also had a streak of idealism I appreciated, and in the limousine ride over to the airport, I appealed to that part of him. Look, I told Yatsenyuk, you have to be with Poroshenko. You have to be a team. You cannot go your separate ways. If new elections are called, it's going to be a disaster. You're going to lose everything. I'm telling you, Arseny, you've got to step up. You've got to be the big man. You can do this. It's going to be hard, but you can do it. When Yatsenyuk reached me on the secure line in Nantucket that afternoon, he had big news, and he wanted me to know first. He told me that the rival parties in the Ukraine had just formed a new coalition government. He will remain prime minister, but a key Poroshenko ally will be the speaker of the new parliament. The two men had also agreed on an agenda going forward. I'm keeping my commitment to you, Mr. Vice President, he told me. I felt pretty good at dinner that night with the 13 of us at the table, working through the Christmas list and knowing that the parties had worked out a new government in Kyiv, or Kiev, or Eve, or Kiev, spelled K-Y-I-V, 4-letter word, cave, or could be Kiev, or key, like a key, like the car keys. Such a hard names to pronounce. We got up Thanksgiving morning and did our annual turkey trot. A 10-mile run for anybody who fell up to it. The other side of the island, I rode the route on a bike with some of the grandchildren. We spent part of the day roasting a football around the beach. I showed young Hunter the bluffs where his father and his uncle used to jump off and catch passes when they were about his age. Buey and Haley and their kids made sure to get some nice pictures of the 4 of them together on the beach. And we went over to the little saltbox house for our annual photo. But the lot was ringed with yellow police tape. The house was gone, a victim of rising ocean tides that had been washing away their 3 or 4 feet of the Sunskip Bluff every year for the past 20. bad storm years might take out 10 times that in certain places. Forever Wild had finally run out of safe ground and run out of time. It had been swept out into the Atlantic. The only thing left behind was a piece of the foundation. We went back to town the day after Thanksgiving, making sure to be at the right spot around the dusk to watch the annual lighting of the Nantucket Christmas tree. Buey had proposed to Haley at the tree lighting in 2001. And they were married to St. Mary's Church. In the heart of downtown Nantucket, the next year, Haley always suspected it was Buey's way of locking them into Biden's family Thanksgiving for all time. And it worked. They were celebrating their 12th anniversary at the end of the week. And Haley and Haley had never missed a Thanksgiving. Even the year Buey was stationed in Iraq, she insisted we all keep the tradition and go to Nantucket. While we did our family stroll, I found myself mulling an issue that was beginning to weigh on me. I was getting a lot of questions from a lot of different quarters about running for president in 2016. Even President Obama has surprised me by asking directly about my plans at our regular lunches a few weeks earlier. He wanted to know if I had thought about all the things I could do if I didn't run. I could still have an effect, he assured me. I could set up a foundation or a center for foreign policy. I could even do a few things I had never done before, like make some money. But have you made up your mind about running? The president asked me about point blank across the table in a little private space just off the Oval Office. No, I haven't, was all I could say. At some point on the streets of Nantucket that day, I brought up the question of 2016 with my two sons. I had a feeling that they didn't want me to make the run. And I said as much. Buey just looked at me. We got to talk, Dad, he said. So when we got back to the house that evening, the three of us sat down in the kitchen and we talked. I knew there were plenty of good reasons not to run, and uncertainty about Buey's health was at the top. And I really suspected that my sons, whose judgments I had come to value and rely on, did not want me to put the family through the ordeal of a presidential campaign just now. Dad, you've got it all wrong, Buey said when we settled down in the kitchen in Nantucket. You got to run. I want you to run. Hunter agreed. We want you to run. The three of us talked for an hour. They wanted to know what I was doing to get ready and when was the right time to announce. There was a strong argument being made by some of my political experts that if I was going to run at all, I should announce right away at the beginning of 2015. But I think the three of us all wanted a little more time to see what happened with Buey. When I decided what was not crucial, my sons told me they just wanted me to know what they were for it. Hunt kept telling me that all of the potential candidates I was the best prepared and best able to lead the country. But it was the conviction and intensity in Buey's voice that caught me off guard. At one point, he said it was my obligation to run, my duty. Duty was a word Buey Biden did not use lightly. When we boarded Air Force Two for the trip home that Sunday, everybody seemed happy. The 5 days had been a success in all ways. Jill had the completed Christmas list stowed away for safekeeping. It had been a great trip. The two of us, Jill and I, arrived back at the Naval Observatory that afternoon and went up the sweeping central staircase to the second floor to settle into the casual living quarters we used when it was just the two of us. It was a small space and somewhat cluttered, but it was our little piece of home inside a residence designed largely for public use. We had furnished the sitting room with leather couches that matched the ones in our library in Wilmington, and lined the shelves with our favorite books and family photos. There was a little table off in one corner that served as our dinner table, a table Deux, spelled A space Deux, where we ate by candlelight even in the long light of summer. I sat down on our couch in the one place in the house that felt as though it truly belonged to us, to relax and reflect. But there was an image I could not get out of my head. I kept seeing the little forever wild house undermined by the powerful indifference of nature and the inevitability of time. No longer able to hold its ground, I could almost hear the sharp crack as its moorings fell. Could envision the ride washing in and out, pulling at it relentlessly and remorselessly until it was adrift on the water, then shadowed up by the sea. No Thanksgiving would ever be quite the same. I pulled out my diary and started to write. I did one big item for my own Christmas list that year, but I was keeping it to myself. Now, November 30, 2014, around 7:30 p.m., just home from Nantucket. I pray we have another year together in 2015. Bewey. So, chapter 1 ends in the page 23 from the book called Promise Me Dad, a Joe Biden story, a year of hope, hardship, and purpose. Again, this book interests me because when I began reading it back in, I believe I got this book back in, when did I buy this book? Actually, I should say right here. There we go. When I got this book back in 2017, I remember I was reading about how government works here in the United States. And I remember I was reading this book, and for some reason, Donald Trump won. And for some reason, Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. Now, my understanding of government is that there is a misunderstanding of power. It seems like the elites in the world, they know how to manifest a mono-ganger people to make them be puppets among real leaders. Seems like in today's world, the real leaders are behind hidden doors, and the actual puppets are in public eyes. Now, it is my job as commanding general of the kingdom of heaven to bring down these outlaws. It is my job to be the outcast. Actually, I shouldn't say outcast because I don't really know what that means. I'm just saying it because it's on top of my head. In reality, I don't have a high school education. So my reading levels are very low. There are many words in my head that I can't even understand. There's many words that exist that were made by smart people to try to cover other faults all within one word. Now, I blame the United States government for failing to keep track of one child left behind. So in 2012, if Barack Obama, see this Joe Biden right there, he is the current president of the United States of America. Now, if the United States of America back in 2012 made a program to defer action for childhood arrivals to help them in charging them $200, or as they say, $500 out of their paychecks to paycheck money that they make, then they should not fail them to try to understand them on what and where they are at the present time. For as we know, time does not exist. So if they feel rushed on why they have not done anything, it is by default that it is at their expense, their fault, that they have failed a child. For how can a child mislead others if, first of all, you are not doing your jobs? Now, the program called DACA was made in 2012. It was to help children. That's why it's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And only children could get this permit of 2 years to be in the U.S. with a Social Security permit to work. Now, if you guys are sponsoring this type of program to make money, then it is wrong. Because it is not only abusement of children, but you are abusing the many people who are under that same program. Now, you could say some are actually being prosperous out of it. If I were to make a list on all the recipients of people who have DACA and begin to analyze on where they are at in life, from a 1 to, let's say there's 10 million users, because there is a lot of immigrants in the US, but not many got DACA. But if we were to label them from a 1 to 10 billion list and try to see where the number one beneficiary of DACA is and where he's at, I'm pretty sure he could be pretty wealthy right now. He's a doctor and he took advantage. So now he's being praised as the top leader of the DACA. But what about the one that fell behind? The one that actually didn't renew it because he saw the actual benefits that come out of this program. Now, if they approved me in the beginning because they say they wanted to help, then why aren't they helping by looking for the fallen child that fell behind? Are they only interested in the gains of money? Or are they interested in helping out people? Because it seems that you guys are living in lust while others are living in poverty. Now, it is my duty as a citizen of this world to take things into my own hands of understanding and try to be the sober man in all of this. Because it seems like the most elite people of this world think they are sober and at most high smart. But I think otherwise, and I want to push them to their limits and test their abilities on how sober they really are. Again, today is Monday, January the 17th, 2022. And this is the reading of Promise Me Dad by Joe Biden. But we're going to find out who actually wrote this book because these are copy phrases of Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't really write this book. A publisher did. Because apparently Joe Biden has money to hire publishers that will do the writing, typing for him. But why Why can't a random person like me who writes every day on a diary can publish something and make it be at the front stores of a Barnes and Noble or the most popular bookstore in your state in the United States of America? Why? Because in this world, money is king. Now, there is a main point that I've been trying to make about what really is money. Because money is just a trade. Money shouldn't even exist. At one time in history, money was made so that one person who really is the lazy person could be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. Those guys are the real lazy people. They made the money so that they could be forever left in their own paradise. Now, it is my duty to try to understand this crisis that's going on in the world. And one day, I hope that I may have the strength to speak among many as one nation of the United States of America to try to address this problem when I become the first president of the United States of America, even though I'm an immigrant. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll start taking questions. You over there. Yeah, you. Oh, sir, but you're not a U.S. citizen. Okay, that's very rude. Get him out of here. Get him. Yeah, open that door. Get him. Get him out of here. Any more questions? You there over there. What's your question? Yeah, sir, but you drink too much McDonald's. When are you going to save up money? You there. You don't question my dietary supplements on how much food I take. Get them out of here. No more questions from KTLA 5 News. And make sure CNN doesn't come out in here anymore. You there. You. Fox 11 News. What's your question? Oh, sir, nothing. I thought so. Alright, guys. Until next time. Just roll it up.